Who is going to interview me?
Nobody. No, we're going to have a conversation, maybe.
Who is going to converse with me?
Alan.
I will.
I've spoken to you already.
I'll,
Sarah, he's going to talk to me? Oh, boy.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to see you here tonight on this solemn and suspicious occasion. Personally, I think the show is rotten. It's my show. I put up the money for it. I can say what I like about it. But a lot of silly fools come here and spend good money to see a show like that. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm glad I ain't. I had to put up the money for this show. Otherwise, the actors would have starved. And after I seen the show, I'm sorry they didn't.
did you think of yourself as a Jewish comedian?
No, nothing. You avoided it like the plague. There was no Jewish comedians, per se. It was outlawed then. It wasn't in. Nobody, you didn't talk Jewish to anybody, and you'd be like an outlaw, you know. It meant nothing. I had nothing to do with it.
So
Never did Jewish jokes.
Were you?
I never catered to that. I didn't need it.
So
And but there was no stress on Jewishism or Hebrewism or Judaism or whatever you call it. This whole interview is about Jewishness.
I
And
guess.
I have nothing to contribute. I know Jewish comedians. Of course, I know. I don't deny I'm Jewish.
Okay, well, people have told me that Jews
I have a
changed.
sense of humor over the other people.
Well, that they changed American humor. Like, before Jews got into it, Americans laughed at this kind of stuff. After Jews, they laughed at something different.
Well, I don't know about that.
When I was a kid and I watched Ed Sullivan, it seemed to me all the comedians were Jewish.
No,
They weren't?
no.
Most?
Well, right here in our show, I never heard say, right here on our show today, right here from Las Vegas is a Jew. Got a Jew comic coming right here. Bring that Jew out here now. I never heard him do that, you know?
I didn't consider myself a Jewish comic per se.
Right.
I never stressed it. I never made a point of being Jewish comedian. You know, our humor had to be completely broad for everybody, and that's what I did.
But
But I can do a Jewish affair and be 100% totally Jewish. I talk about the rabbi who got a new temple in a shabby part of town, and there were mice all over the temple. So he called an old rabbi and asked him what to do, and the old rabbi said, go and get little tiny yarmulkes and put them on the mice and bar mitzvah them, and you'll never see them in the temple again. That's a funny joke. That's Jewish.
I'd like to talk to you about your comedy, but I'd also like to talk on the general subject of whatever, Jewish sensibility, Jewish culture.
Jewish?
Yeah.
Well, I can talk about Jewish sensibilities and Jewish culture, but I don't think that that's worldly enough for conversation. It's too specific.
Okay, well then let's talk about your comedy, and we don't.
My comedy?
Yeah. Your.
Well, my comedy doesn't indulge various religions. My comedy just, if it's funny, okay, keep it.
So I feel like when I talk to you and when I talk to some other comedians of your era who were Jewish, you don't like being called a Jewish comic. You don't like the idea that...
I don't go around disliking it. It's just that I prefer not to be called, to be thought of as a Jewish comic. As a matter of fact, it never was my thing. It never was.
The comedians of our world were basically Jewish, predominantly Jewish. The singers were Italian. The directors were atheists. and because they don't believe in anything. You know, it wasn't that I avoided being Jewish. It was the fact that we didn't do that then. You know, the audiences that we had were all over the country, Midwest, where they never saw a Jew.
Do you think people knew you were Jews? Like, did your Midwest audience know that you're a bunch of Jews?
Oh, I think so. I think so, because every once in a while we'd throw in something, you know, that gave you away and doesn't. Nobody ever tried to keep it a secret. I miss the guys that were my peers. I really do. We did Yiddishkeit. Was our own personal, private shtick that we did with each other, which we don't do anymore because it was not for the public. But they're all gone. Jan Murray's gone. Rick Hackett is gone. Red is gone. The guys that I was friendly with. Chicky's left, but Chicky moved to Palm Springs. He's gone. And
Palm Springs is gone?
well, he's gone. He hates it there. He's becoming more bitter and more bitter every day because he hates it. His wife loves it. He hates it there. He wants to come back here. But we won't let him because he's too Jewish.
Jewish humor was like European type of humor. What made them laugh, you know? Jews didn't laugh when a guy slipped on a banana. You know, somebody says, that's funny, the guy slipping on a banana. Jews wouldn't laugh at that. Jews would say, look at the way he ruined the banana. The banana was all right. What was bottom with that? Why didn't he pick it up? And he could have had bananas and cream. What's the matter? You know, that's what I'm getting at. Every people, and I'm sure everybody's going to say, the Irish had their humor, the Italians had their humor. But being Jewish, I did the Jewish things. If I was Polish, I would have done Drotki Majecha Bobec, Kemachedro, Drotki down in the mines, Boski Pajecha. That's a great joke, but nobody knows Polish.
There was a time when the Italians came to America. There was a time when the Irish came to America. We were looking at these people coming into our nation, and we had Jewish stand-ups. I remember distinctly Lou Holtz telling this joke, which is classic today. Said, Sam Lapidus, that was his character that he used. Sam Lapidus goes to the grocery store and to buy some salt. He goes to the grocer, and he says to the grocer, "Have you got? You have salt?" And the man says, "Have I got salt? Have I got salt? Here, take a look this wall, salt, salt. Take a look down here, salt, salt. Take a look here, barrel salt, box of salt. Come on downstairs, I'll show you more salt. That kind of salt, we have salt here. And where else? Salt, salt we got." And Sam Lapidus says, "This is marvelous, but will you ever sell all this salt?" And the grocer says, "Me, I can't sell salt. But the guy who sells me salt, oh, can he sell salt?" That was the kind of joke that we were loving that time. But the Italians were loving their jokes, and were the Irish learning their jokes. Why shouldn't the Jews be there as well? And why are we giving them extra attention? God knows they weren't really, I swear, they weren't really better than everybody else. But it was that when you had a Jewish comedian, he was damn good. That was about it. But I will not join you in that special acceptance of Jews as the comedians. I don't think that.
When I was a kid and I saw you on Ed Sullivan and some other Buddy Hackett, my parents said, he's Jewish, he's Jewish, he's Jewish. And I thought, I just accepted that you were Jewish, and I thought this was Jewish comedy. There's
a lot of, that's a great misnomer. A lot of people do that. A lot of Jewish people do that. He's Jewish. He must be Jewish. Not Jewish, come in to hell with him. He's not Jewish. Jewish. He's not Jewish. Yeah, everybody's Jewish. Cary Grant, Jew. Everybody Jew. Gregory Peck, I knew him was a Jew. That went on all the time, you know.
Well, I mean, when people talk about Jewish humor, I wonder, do they mean a little Yiddish thrown in, or do they mean something?
Yeah, they mean a little Yiddish thrown in, or giving it a Jewish slant, you know. Sarah, you went through a red light, and you went through 2 stop signs. And Sarah said, I'm driving. You know, that kind of thing. The little Yiddish accent helped proceed with the joke. My wife speaks perfect Yiddish, and so do I. We're the last of a breed. I can speak perfect Yiddish. Mamalushan, we call it.
Yeah, Mamalushan.
But
and you don't miss talking Mamalushan?
No, there's no one to talk to. All the great Jews are dead. Jewish comedians have died. Jewish humor is dead.
I'm just
But
saying.
Yiddishkeit is something that's just innate, or it's unnerving, maybe not innate. But I don't know. I don't dwell on it, and I don't search for it. Not that I don't seek it. It's just not around anymore.
So, do you miss Yiddishkeit just in your social life, in your day-to-day life? Do you miss whatever it is that being around Jews gives you?
I have no comment here. I don't even know what you're asking.
Sit down in a park, and as they sit down in a park bench, one goes, "Oi," and the other one says, "I thought we weren't going to talk about the kids." The immigrants who came from Russia, my parents, Russia and Romania, they had nothing. They had nothing. They didn't know the language. They had each other, and they had humor. Every story was sort of, you'd take the poorest person, like a Tevye, and he'd make him holler at God like crazy and find humor in the worst situation imaginable. My father and my Aunt Dussie were filthy in Yiddish. They would never let me be in the room when they were talking for fear that I would understand what they were saying. They were, always talking about someone's finten is his ass, and laughing hysterically, putting everyone down. And listen, Jews own humor. I'm sort of proud to say that that's true.
And do you think that that's still true?
No, it's not still true. The thing that helps humor is oppression. The thing that kills humor is assimilation. That group that came over, your grandparents, maybe your parents to a degree, yes, there's something lost in assimilating. Really, that's what it is, getting comfortable. If you've had a great childhood and a good marriage and a little bit of money, you're going to make a lousy stand-up comedian. So the Jewish dilemma was they had nothing. So the humor just it came out of their pores, really.
I have the feeling now that the average Jew is not as funny as the average Jew was when all your friends were Jewish. Like when I was a kid, a 60-year-old Jew, that was an old Jew. I'd be sitting eating my soup, like whatever. You're not like, to me, you're definitely old enough chronologically to be an old Jew, but you don't remind me of.
No, I'm not the old Jew. I laugh at old Jews because I'm not one of them. But I had the same thing. And sitting with the soup, and they'd all sit there and they're slurping it. And then, we used to sit wherever you could get a seat in this horn and harness and feel, and they slurp. You have to make that noise when you eat. What do you know about noise? You don't know noise. I know noise. These old Jews are gone. They're gone. My father was the funniest human being I ever met to this day. And I met all the greats. Bob Hope, George Burns, Jack Benny, Red Skeletons, and they're all brilliant. My father would have put them away. Funniest man. He was in vaudeville as a young guy. He was a singer, dancer, comedian. And he had a contract to do movies with the Three Stooges. He went home from California. He hadn't been home for a couple years. He went home. He was in vaudeville since he was 9. And he went home, and his father, who was a leading rabbi in Philadelphia, had a whole talk with him. You cannot perform on Friday night, which is Shabbat. You can't have a job where they make you work Friday night to Saturday night, or Saturday, until sundown. You can't do it. Our people are survivors. We survive on our tradition. You're violating the tradition. Never got on stage again. Regretted it his whole life. I was taught by my father that there's something funny in everything. And you want to know how he taught me it? He said, there's something funny in everything. We were walking down the street. I was about 5. He said, well, look at Mr. Conley fixing his car. He said, now tell me what's funny. It was a hot July day. Conley, no shirt on, little overweight guy. He was in the street. He was trying to change a tire, and one nut wouldn't come off. And he's trying, and he's banging the tools, and he's kicking it, and he's screaming, and he's yelling. He's infuriated. He's sweating. I said, there's nothing funny. He says, now. Call me Kingy. He says, Kingy, I want you to look at it through this extra eye that you have. It's the funny eye. And now only think funny and look at the situation. Tell me what's funny. And I looked, I start laughing. I said, his pants are coming off. You could see his rear end. I said, that's so funny. He said, there's something funny in everything.
My father was an insanely brilliant comedian, and he died very young. He died when he was 54 years old at a Lucille Ball Desi Arnaz roast. He got up, killed the audience, sat down, had a heart attack, and died at the Beverly Hilton. And so I was very young at the time, and so it affects you for the rest of your life. But he did a Greek dialect comedian, Park Your Carcass. Everyone thought he was Greek. I used to watch my father when he would watch television, and I would watch what he laughed at. He enjoyed intelligence, he enjoyed clever humor, and when it was funny, when it was really funny. I mean, I go out to dinner a lot, and I watch people laughing hysterically at nothing. And I envy them. And I'm not being a jerk. I'm being truthful. Because laughing is such great medicine. And they're just, I don't know what they're laughing at, but they find it funny. They're going nuts. And so he never did that. I like to think that everything I've done is a Jewish humor because I'm a Jew. And I think that I have the sensibility of a Jew. And I don't mean that arrogantly. I think that's just who we are as a people. As silly as Super Dave is, there's something there that comes from my soul, and it's Jewish.
Yeah, well, I thought Super Dave was not Osborne. That's not Jewish, but the kind
Well, as Super Bob Einstein, you don't go far. You get 2 shows and you're never heard from again because there's no Jewish daredevil. Jews own daredevils. They don't perform. They manage them, okay? You asked about my father.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an instance which will describe his brilliance. We were visiting my older brother in Fort Ord, up near San Francisco. And we walked down a pier and we saw a place called the House of 1,000 Names. And we walk in and it's nothing but 1,000 little green cups with every name and every derivation of that name on the cups. Bob, Bobby, Robbie, Rob, everything's down the thing. So I walk in there, I'm a little kid, and my dad walks in, and my dad goes to the door and says, Tunic, let's go. And I got it. And I turned, and they chased us down the what's his name? Tunic. How? T-U-N-I-C. Oh my, because he looked around, saw a name that wasn't on the cups and called me it. So that is a complete piece of humor.
Right. And how, yeah, that he wants to put a pin, I don't know. I don't want to analyze it, but I want to kind of analyze it.
There's no reason to analyze it. He just formed a piece of humor. He saw it. He saw House of 1,000 Names. He knew these people had spent every waking moment of their life making sure they had every name they could possibly, and he fucked up their, I can't swear on this.
Yeah, you can swear.
Oh, he fucked up their store, is what he did.
It's a store where they sold cups?
Yes, that's what I said.
No, I thought...
How come you don't understand what I just said?
I was more...
You were what? You were asleep? Are you listening to me? Because I'm wasting my time if you're not.
I'm listening. I just didn't know what the names were on. I thought they were on balloons.
There's a guy that wants to join a country club that doesn't let Jews in. So he says to his friend, the guy, his name is Mo Ginstein, says to his friend, Hugh, I want to be a member of your club. He says, listen, Mo, they don't want Jews. So when you register, don't say your name is Mo Ginstein. Don't say you have a big Cadillac. Don't say the kids go to Brandeis University. You gotta fudge it up. So Mo goes to the registrar, says to the guy, I should be a member. They bring him the form, says, sir, what's your name? He says, Jack Smith. Smith. So what kind of a car do you have? A Saab. Put down Saab. Where do your kids go to school? He says, Yale. They go to Yale. Sir, what's your religion? He says, Goyish.
It's like there are TV shows on the air, like Seinfeld. And that was a show where I felt like every character in it was a Jew, even though they changed their names. It's like George Costanza and his family were all Jews, but they have an Italian name.
Right.
And Elaine Bennis, also supposed to be a Gentile, is a major Jew. On the Golden Girls, Estelle Getty and Bea Arthur are supposed to be Italians. Also, major Jews. It's
Right.
kind of like, it's like if Myron Cohen were to start calling himself Patty O'Brien.
Right.
You'd go, okay, but you're still a Jew. No, don't try to get one past me. You're a Jew.
So why, even in the era of Seinfeld, did they not just make them Jewish? Why didn't they just admit they were Jews? Like, what did they think they were going to gain?
I don't know, but I remember seeing something about the making of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, where she was originally supposed to be a divorced woman who's trying to make it on her own. And they warned her, they said, no, there's two things that the public doesn't like, divorced women and Jews.
Typical Jewish joke. Woman goes to the hospital, says, Mrs. Ginsburg, how's my husband? She said, he's dead. They said, well, give him an enema. Doctor says, it wouldn't help. And she said, it wouldn't hurt.
Did you feel like you had to hide your Jewishness?
Never in the Catskills.
Right.
See, that's your stronghold. I worked at Concord for years. Their joy was to say who they walked out on. I walked out. Johnny Carson, wasn't funny. I walked out on him. Unbelievable. Maurice Chevalier, how did he ever make it? Well, what is they? They would do. And the funny thing about the Concord is when you were on stage, they had 4 doors, big doors. And you knew how you were doing because when the door opened as they were leaving, the light would come shining through.
Right.
So that's how'd you do today? 2 doors. How was he? It was a terrible act. He was a 4-door act. There were very few 4-door acts. I'll tell you a 4-door act. Yul Brynner was a 4-door act.
Do you think Jews are still the same?
No. No. Jews are not the same. Jews we're intellectually superior. I don't care what people, they may get pissed off at me by saying this. We have the same joy in our kids. That never changed. It always was a Jewish thing to take care of his kids. And I say in my act that Jews care about kids. You don't get a Jewish guy saying to his kid, strap a bomb on, blow yourself up, you get 80 virgins. We say, here's 100, get a hooker, now go to law school. This is what our dream is. I find, and I'm not saying all, my Jewish friends, charming, intellectual, and funny. Some are bores, some are terrible bores, but that's everybody. But I think a Jew looks to be funny. He doesn't look to camouflage it. If there's a chance to be funny, he's funny. I never thought I'm funny because I'm Jewish. I thought I'm funny because I'm funny. But Jews are funny. I'll hang with my Gentile friend. They're not funny. They're not funny.
My argument has always been that Jewish people are funny even when they're not trying to be funny. I was watching Paul Simon perform in the park, and my dad's friend said about Paul Simon, he said, that Paul Simon's okay. He's not one of those jazzed up characters in the cockamamie outfits. So to me, that was like hilarious.
Right.
Now, I have to say that when I recall that, many people think that it's not hilarious. They don't get why that is hilarious.
Well, maybe you should do it with an accent.
That Paul Simon, he's okay. He's not one of those jazzed up characters in the cockamamie outfits. I just love
That killed.
Yeah, well, the thing is that I've never heard anybody say jazzed up character.
Right.
I mean, probably I've heard it, but cockamamie. But put cockamamie in there. And then the other example I use is my friend Bill, who was my comedy partner, but he wasn't trying to be funny. It was Whitney Houston's song was on, and it was she was singing "How Will I Know," that song, "How Will I Know?" And my friend Bill said, "You'll know, Whitney. You'll know. Believe me, you'll know." So that to me, that's the Jewish thing, and I feel like is that been assimilated into Italian and everything else? Is it also partly New York? I never identify initially as Jewish, but I feel like the rhythm of everything I do can go back there.
Any rhythm that is that kind of rhythm is it's a Yiddish rhythm. Let's look at Don Rickles, okay? Now, is what Don Rickles says funny in and of itself? Yeah, maybe, but it's all rhythm. Right. It's all rhythm. And then I have to hear it from this guy. And then there's a man with a blue coat, and he's standing in the sidewalk. And then I got to hear it from this guy. And then this, I got this over here, I got that over here, and then this guy going around with the thing. It's all rhythm. Or Seinfeld, even though the words and the premise might be funny, he's going to a place where a man never went.
Well, actually, the other day I realized that I never related to William Shatner being Jewish.
Wow, is he Jewish?
Yeah.
Now that you mention that, it's that rhythmic pausing. And then I was on radio with him once, Shatner, and he said, this is the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life. He said, Peter, the traffic coming over here was absolutely holocaustic. Congratulations, Bill. You've reduced the Holocaust to a traffic report. Congratulations.
I've always thought that comedy was Jewish jazz. It was our people's way of expressing our powerlessness and our intelligence at the same time. All comedy, I think, comes from frustration. People say it comes from pain, but I don't want to go that far because it's not quite true. But I think it comes from frustration, some kind of frustration. And who feels more frustrated than a group of very intelligent people who've been bred into intelligence, right? Forced bred into intelligence because so many of us were eliminated, feeling that we have to say something. We have to talk about this. We have no choice.
Right.
There's a melancholy to Jewishness that I think comes out in most Jewish comics. There's a testiness that comes out in Jewish comics that's a function of their alienation and their suspicion about the way that the mainstream culture treats them. And I think that the Jewish comic were the shock troop. They were the shock troops of modernism in that kind of a way, so that even though they were able to express it more easily, because we've always been an expressive people, because we're not beholden to a certain culture, so we don't have to worry about what people think of us in quite the same way, because we've got our community to back us up, we were able to say things that the Gentile community only wished they could say. And when they heard it, they went, yeah, we're afraid too. Although we don't express it the same way. In fact, we don't express it at all. But thank you, Jew, for saying it. We're really glad you said it for us.
I mean, I have to ask, just basically, do you believe that as a basic model of American humor? I know I've already asked it, but I've had so much doubting of that premise that I've come to doubt.
The history of 20th century humor is Jewish. Period.
Okay. And
period.
I tell you, the trouble with me? I appeal to everyone who can do me absolutely no good. My whole life, I don't get no respect. No respect from anyone. Well, the other day, my boy came home from school. He was depressed. I said to him, why are you depressed? He told me that day he learned a new saying. Like father, like son. Now, I tell you, I always wondered how my wife got her license the first time she took the test. I found out the inspector said he wouldn't go through that again. They say when you're driving, you know, watch out for the other guy. I'll tell you, when my wife is driving, you don't have to worry about the other guy. I mean, she'll get him. I mean, I'm used to working in tough places, tough. I work places like the Pink Elephant, the Club Jinx, Aldo's, formerly Vito's, formerly Nunzio's. Oh, that was a tough place, Nunzio's, tough. As you entered this place, you went down 2 steps, physically and socially. Every night the boss would say to me, be funny. My people come here to forget their troubles. I mean, how do you make a guy forget he's up for manslaughter?
The Jewish guy who's marooned on the desert island, and out of the tools of the earth constructs 2 enormous, magnificent synagogues over a period of 10 years. And when he's rescued, they say, this is magnificent work, but why 2? And he says, in this one I go, in that one I wouldn't set foot.
I think that comedy ultimately comes from darkness. It does, because that sense of humor is a great conduit to survival. And I think that as Jews, you know, just culturally, we suffer a lot of pain. And even when there isn't pain to be suffered, we enjoy giving it to ourselves. We've gone through the hardest, toughest time. I think other cultures have also.
Right.
But I think traditionally, we have a hard time. In fact, we are very comfortable in our hard time. We're very comfortable, Kvetchen.
I think
even if things are good, you know, we even question that. How are things doing? They're doing. You know, I don't think we're comfortable if things are fabulous. That's not even a Jewish word. You don't hear Jews going, what a fabulous.
No.
It was nice. It was good. We even have to squeeze into the niceness. You can see with our expressions and everything. You can't even say something's wonderful without, you gotta squeeze into it, right? I had a time, I had a wonderful, it's even when we're talking about wonderful, we make it painful, right? It was sensational. It was the nicest, but look, take this expression and you can say the same thing as this being sensational. And they all died, and there was fire, and there was raping, and then take these same expressions, these same Jewish expressions, and you can make it. It was the best vacation I ever. You see, we don't even change the expression. That's why we don't even know. We don't. You know, if things are great, that's why we answer questions with questions. Because we can't even face the wonderfulness. How are you? How am I? How am I? They can't just say, you ask a non-Jew, how are you? I'm fine. That's it.
Right.
We can't just be fine. We want to question the fine because we might feel fine. But it's not right for a Jew to just be fine, right? How are you?
How should I be?
Yes.
The big crucial event for this culture was the First Crusade in 1096. Which marks the first time that a bunch of Gentiles in Europe decided, having nothing better to do, we'll kill every Jew we can find for no apparent reason. And this had a terrible effect on people. And all of a sudden you had this, what had been, I'm not saying they got along, nobody really knows, but there'd been a sort of coexistence that wasn't totally oppositional. That just changed overnight. And you had, like, you know, those other people, they just weren't not you, they were your enemy. And it's like you said, all of a sudden, if you saw 3 Gentiles and there was one of you, you figured chances are good they're gonna kick the shit out of me. Even if I haven't done anything, they're them and I'm me, and what they're here for is to beat the hell out of me. And once you got to that, there wasn't anything to do but complain. To the point where people got to the point where they didn't even know how to express satisfaction except in terms of a complaint. The joke that sums up that whole way of looking at things is the famous one about the old man on the train. You know this joke? Okay, guy gets onto a train, sits down. Across from him, there's sitting an old Jewish man. Train is not 10 minutes out of Grand Central Station. The old man leans back in his chair, looks up at the ceiling, and goes, "Oh, am I thirsty?"
Okay, I do know.
10 seconds pass. So, "Oi, am I thirsty?" Well, after about 90 seconds have elapsed, the other man realizes that he is going to be listening to "Oi, am I thirsty" for the entire train trip if he doesn't do something. So he stands up, goes down all the way to the other end of the train, takes one of those conical Dixie cups down, fills it up with water. The guy is still sitting there going, "Oi, am I thirsty? Oi, am I thirsty?" as if there is somebody who's actually paying attention to him. Man with the water gets there, he reaches out his hand, he says, "Here, drink this." The old man looks up at him, takes the cup, he drinks it. There are 10 seconds have elapsed, the old man leans back in his seat and he goes, "Oi, was I thirsty." This is the typical Jewish joke.
Right.
This is not only complaining to show satisfaction, but that kind of passive-aggressive hostility, the way of conveying to this guy, like, just because I'm not thirsty does not mean that you can shut me up. I don't know who you think you are.
When you were a kid, did you think your grandparents were funny?
Yeah, because, well, at least in case of one grandfather, he was definitely playing for laughs. My favorite thing, it's why I remember him fondly. I must have been about 11, 12 years old, driving with him somewhere. I have no idea where we were going. There's a woman walking on the street, and he says to me in Jewish, he says, "Oh, you see her?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "She's suing the city." I said, "What, you know who she is? How do you know she's suing?" He says, "They built the sidewalk too close to her ass." So he was already a character. He was working at it.
When you hear the word Jewish humor, do you think about your mother and your grandfather, or do you think about Alan King and Shecky Green?
I think about all of it, because I think it's all together. I think it's a style. I think Alan King performed it, and I think my grandmother lived it. That's the only difference. I don't think that Mark Maron, who's a friend of mine, who's very funny, will come close to my Uncle Chuna for being funny. Like, Mark is funny, but Uncle Chuna is funny.
In what?
The way he eats soup.
Right.
Mark Maron could never come up with a routine that's funnier than watching Uncle Chuna eat soup.
I wonder for myself whether I'm fantasizing something that didn't exist, because if I ask my uncles, was your mother, my grandmother funny? No. Was on my father's side, were they funny? No. Like, who was funny? And yet, in my memory, at some Purim party or something like that, the old people were just hilarious.
Right, but that's funny because, it fits in our understanding of what that stereotype is, what the expectations of it for. Were they trying to be funny? No. Are we laughing at them? Yeah. Most of what we're referencing is a series of tics and idiosyncrasies that are hilarious because they comfort us. What is it? How many Jewish grandmothers did it take to screw in a light bulb? None. Oh, sit in the dark. So whatever. That character in that joke is not a funny person.
Right.
It's the stereotype that's funny. So what you're responding to is the sort of comfort you find in the consistency of old Jewish people to have a certain amount of mannerisms that are funny, but are they trying to be funny? No.
So, therefore, it follows that that'll never exist again, because you and I, when we are actually old Jews, won't be making those noises.
No, of course we'll be making those noises. I'm sure you're making those noises now. I mean, you're making those noises now. I can't even hear you making them. I can see them happening.
Okay, so this old Jewish man, it's 3 a.m. on New Year's Eve. He's driving around by himself. He's a 90-year-old Jewish man, 3 a.m., driving around Beverly Hills by himself. A cop pulls him over and says, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to a lecture on alcohol abuse, how alcohol ruins your families and destroys your health." The cop says, "Who's giving this lecture at 3 in the morning?" The guy said, "My wife." My aunts were funny. My aunts and uncles were very funny.
So were they funny in what you would call a Jewish way?
Yes. Yeah, my aunts and uncles, I remember my uncle and aunt, they were 55th wedding anniversary. I was in Florida at their house. And I said, "Happy anniversary." And my uncle looked at me and said, and she was in the room, he goes, "I didn't kill her yet." And she said, "Go ahead and try." This was on their 55th wedding anniversary. They
always had something to argue about. I told you not to get this cake. You know, this would be a half-hour fight because they got the wrong cake. So it's hysterical, really, when you think about it. But
yeah,
you know,
like even that voice that you just did. Without that voice, would it be as funny? Like, is that gone?
yeah, that is gone. There was a little bit of European accent and mixed in with some Lower East Side and the Bronx. Sonny, I want to tell you what's going on here. You know, that type of, like they swallowed a softball. Yeah, I tell you, it's all right, you know.
I like that. I mean, I love hearing that voice. So what are we going to do when that voice is gone?
Right.
Maybe I am an old Jew like them, but I don't think, well, maybe my crew would disagree that I don't complain enough.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, you know that joke about the waiter comes over, all these Jewish women sitting in a restaurant, and he goes, "Is anything all right?"
Do you have a favorite Jewish joke?
Oh yeah, I mean, one of my favorite ones is like those jokes, the one where the Jewish. You mean specific examples?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like the Jewish kid, Jewish mother is with a child at the beach, and this is the one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he goes out swimming, and then starts to drown, and the lifeguard saves the child, and he brings the child back to the mother and says, "Your child was in the ocean, it was drying, and here I saved your son." And the mother said, "He had a hat." You can't get any better than that.
No.
He had a hat.
Although the one...
You embellish it more, right?
No. Well, we tell it without a lifeguard.
Oh.
I think it's better without a lifeguard. My version, the grandmother prays to God and says...
Wow.
Says, like, I know I haven't been that good a Jew.
Oh, that's great.
And I haven't been to temple, but if you would see it in your mercy to bring back my grandson, and a wave deposits him on the shore, and she says he had a hat.
Yes.
Wait, you're talking about why Jews are funny, and you haven't talked about Jewish mothers yet? You know, I would have no act without my Jewish mother. I think a lot of people would have no act without their Jewish mothers. I mean, even if you don't talk about your Jewish mother in your act, you're funny because of your annoying Jewish mother. So my mother's in a nursing home now. She actually calls herself an inmate. So, you know, you call up, "Hey, what's up?" "Oh, I had lunch with the other inmates, and we have a book club, me and a couple of inmates." I mean, and the thing is, there's no reaction. It's just...
She's not saying it ironically?
Right, no, it's just the inmate. That's it. And you know, it's hilarious. She's like, "What do you want? What am I supposed to call myself?" They can't say what they mean.
Right.
So they, New Year's Eve, I called my mother. She's like, "What are you doing for New Year's?" So we're having a dinner party. We ordered in filet mignon, caviar. I'll be eating shit. I'd bring a friend home. I'd be like, "Ma, this is my new friend Beth. Do you think she would hide you? Do you?"
Wow.
You know, I just got my knee replaced. So I said, "Oh, I'm going to the doctor next week." "Does he know you're walking like a hilarity?" First of all, what is a hilarity? And second of all, how about, you know, "Oh, you know, I noticed that you were limping a little. Is it going to be okay?" Nothing is ever tender. You know, my son Henry's 16 now, and I look at his friends who are girls. I can't imagine them talking like this all the time. Like, my grandparents were all born in the 1800s. So my memory is of that. These kids are having a completely different experience of what it's like to be Jewish.
Jews used to be a much more tighter knit community. Now it's like all separated. You understand? There's like Jews, they came here from America. They all lived down in the Lower East Side, right? They all lived in ghettos in America where they experienced everything together. So the guy eating that soup, right, that you're talking about, and he made it funny because he knew everybody else ate that soup. You know, they all went to Ratner's, or they all went to 2nd Avenue Deli, or wherever. They've all been there, and they know the price of the soup. Your connection to Judaism is through comedy. I think I mentioned it before, but the other day I was in 2nd Avenue Deli, and the smell is so geschmacked. It's so delicious and beautiful. And this guy walked in, looked just like you, with his wife, goes, smells like Judaism. To him, that pastrami, that scent in the air, the rogalach, the pickles, the whole thing, that to him is Judaism. Right? To you, it's going to a comedy club, having some guy say, whatever the joke is, and making a Jewish shtick out of it, and that's your experience to it. For people that are so small in the world, that make such a big blast and such a big, we talk so much about it.
Yeah.
No other comedians go up and discuss it and do a callback to it and bring it around,
Right.
So we bring attention to it, right?
Yeah.
Once in a while, you'll hear a comic say, I'm Irish Catholic, blah, 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 right? And then whatever the whole line is, or his line. But Jews are, constantly, and they can always bring back to it. And, and such a small group of people in the world.
Right.
But we're so loud. It's just so funny that we're so loud.
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, we're self-obsessed, for sure.
For sure. Look at you. We've got a camera crew to discuss your Judaism. It's so self-obsessed. What guy, what Christian in the world is running around now with a camera crew? Talk to me about being Christian. No one cares.
What's the thesis of this whole piece?
Okay.
Because if you're trying to say that you're either saying Jews aren't as funny as they once were, or Jews are funnier, both are wrong.
Here's the thesis.
Yeah.
The thesis is probably.
Yeah. It's
what I
probably.
most want to do is go back and sit at a Hanukkah party with my old relatives.
Yeah.
Because
they're hilarious.
Because they're hilarious. I can't do that.
Everything.
If I want to reconnect and experience that again, I can't. What can I do? Yeah, what can I do?
You could go to the Friars Club and just sit with those guys. They're still around. It's sad that it's definitely the end of an era. Definitely. Like even the Friars. I mean, I used to go to the Friars and see Milton Berle and Henny Youngman just having lunch right there, and it was just like, this is incredible. And Buddy Hackett, and they all died. I don't know if you heard. Well, first of all, older people are just funny in general. They have those thick Eastern European accents, so everything was just funny. There's nothing funny about the way I speak right now.
Right.
I have a joke in my act that I talk about how we all text black, right? And no, we do. We have this societal peer pressure to sound hip and cool when we text, right? And what people do we associate with being hip and cool? Certainly not my people. Nobody texts Jewish. So how's everything by you? No, you text back, yo, what's up? What's up? Like, where you at? Yo, what up? Where you at? That's how you got to text. You get, my 70-year-old Jewish father texted me the other day, literally, apostrophe S-U-P-S-O-N. Sup, son. Sup. Sup. This is a man who talks like this. How are you? It's nice to see you. It's always a pleasure. And then he's like, sup, son. Sup.
This is the only place you're going to find crowds nowadays, ladies and gentlemen, on television. I worked the nightclub last week. We had a crowd. I thought he'd never leave. He was an audience. Gave me a nice round of applause. Springtime in New York. The weather. Ugh. I looked out on the windowsill this morning. There was a robin. Frozen stiff, but he was there. I came from a poor family in our house. We had wall-to-wall poverty. Instant nothing we had. In fact, I had to pull down our house to make a slum. We used to carry blackjacks in a pencil box. Teachers came to school in armored trucks. We didn't graduate, we were acquitted.
There's a joke, I'm trying to remember the setup of it, but it has to do with like an 80-year-old Jew, Moshe, he's about to die, it's near the end, he's with his buddies, and he sees a church, and he says, you know what, I'm gonna go and convert, and they say to him, Moshe, you've been a Jew all your life, how could you do this? How could you convert? He goes, better one of them to die.
The question is, what does it mean to be Jewish?
Well, I
mean, the answer partially is like it's defined partially from the outside. Like certainly the sort of stereotypes exist of like a secret cabal where Jews meet. Like, no one thinks I'm not part of that cabal. You know what I mean? Like, no one's like, it's really the Hasids that meet up and control the money, not this nice Jew who didn't have a bar mitzvah. Like, so you're just partially defined from the outside as just being Jewish. And then, of course, there's just probably everything that comes with any religion that has all weird rules about, like, if your goat falls in a neighbor's hole, or, you know, whether you should have a beard or don't have sex with men a lot if or don't sleep with the neighbor's wife, even though she's delicious. You know, all that stuff, like, I don't know. Like, probably don't steal and probably don't kill. But if my goat falls on your land, like, whatever. Like, I'm not going to make you pay for my goat.
So,
does that answer your question of what it means to be Jewish?
Being a Jew means no matter what religion you might change to, when whoever is coming to round up the Jews will put you in there, whatever the means of travel is back then, to get you to whatever the means of mass genocide is. So that, yeah. And it's funny, it's like, I think like Spielberg said, growing up, he was embarrassed about being a Jew. And I remember thinking, well, weren't we all? It is a thing of, if you're in a very Jewish situation, you feel like, oh God, I hate these people. But I think every ethnic group has that.
When I left my parents' home, I was 18, you know, and I was never going to go back in a synagogue again, I don't care what. I kind of thought this Jew thing was going to end. Like, I really thought it was kind of...
A lot of people thought this Jew thing was going to end, trust me. For centuries, people thought this Jew thing was going to end.
But yeah, no, well, that's true, I guess.
If it wasn't for the Orthodox, the religion would disappear.
Right, the religion, right.
They keep the religion going.
So in order to keep the Jewish...
We would just you know, fit in with everybody else, and it would be gone. It would just, we'd drop a little of this, a little of that, and before you know it, you're eating white bread with mayonnaise.
For me, I thought that being Jewish would always be part of who I am, but I didn't want it to define me, I guess.
Right.
You feel like it defines you?
The older I get, the more it does, yeah, absolutely. It's my soul. So, you know.
Okay, I mean, that's a mouthful, it's your soul. Like, you have a Jewish soul.
Right, well, if you believe in a creator and they've given you a soul, mine is a Jewish one.
So does your Jewish soul have more in common with another Jewish soul than it does with the Christian soul?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
We have a group that we called the Funniest Men in America, which was Seinfeld, Paul Reiser, Larry Miller, and myself. And when we were all Jewish guys, when we first started comedy, we were broke one New Year's Eve. We had lunch New Year's Day, and we had such a good time. We said, let's all have lunch every New Year's Day for the rest of our lives, and we did it for 30 years straight.
And it's not a coincidence that you were four best friends and all Jews.
No, it probably not. It probably not. I mean, we all have non-Jewish friends, of course, that, you know.
Not good enough to eat with, though.
Yeah, yeah. We had a lot in common with being Jewish and being funny.
Yeah, so that's a...
It was a thread.
Yeah, so do you still feel that, like just a natural kinship with Jews?
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, the worse it gets for Jews, the closer I feel to them. You know, anti-Semitism and just going out of, you know, it's going crazy all over the world. So, I mean, I feel more for my people now more than ever. I mean, we've been chased since the beginning of time, and we will always be chased. It's in the DNA of the world. That's the way it is. Get the Jews.
The level of anti-Semitism hasn't changed. It's the same as it always was. And if you go to a deli, you understand it. Because Jews tend to eat with their mouth open. You never have to ask a Jew, what did you have for lunch? Because you can see it. I was in a golf tournament, okay? And you, as a celebrity, your whole job is to be nice to the people you're playing with. And people know me as Super Dave Osborne. They don't really know me as Bob Einstein. So I'm riding with this man who's a very nice man. And I said, do you have children? He said, yes, we have a daughter. I said, oh, really? How old? He said, 20. I said, is she married? He said, no, but she's going with a Jew. And I said, you know what? There's no real reason for us to talk the rest of the game.
So you...
And I get this. Why? Are you Jewish? And then for the rest of the 18 holes, he's trying to explain he didn't mean it in a bad way. He meant going with a Jew, and then he was going to continue on.
He was just being specific.
He was being specific. I'm just, thank God, we had Bertie Madoff, and now his son is being indicted. Thank God Sandusky was not Sandustine.
So I'm just trying to think who else I'm glad isn't Jewish.
Charles Manson.
I wouldn't have minded if he was Jewish, because we're not known as serial killers. So I don't think that would have hurt our reputation.
It wouldn't have hurt our reputation?
I think if you...
What about Jeffrey Dahmer?
No, I think if they
He
did...
ate trafe.
That's
the difference, okay?
I think Bernie Madoff is the worst, because it was money.
He is, yes, exactly.
So I think if Bernie Madoff had killed people, like, I don't know, Roman Polanski or something, I don't think people would hate the Jews for that.
I really don't know what you're saying. You know what it's like now? It's like I'm on a bad balloon trip over Italy. And you're the one person I'm with, and I didn't know you. I really liked you until we got on, and now you made no sense. But it's a long ride, and we're going to have fun.
We're often in the room where we're the only Jew, and most of the time I don't notice it, but sometimes I just sort of get a shiver, and it's like, fuck, I'm the only Jew in the room.
I'm frequently the only Jew in a room, and I'm the only one who cares. And that's what's changed. You know, in the 30s, if my father was the only Jew in the room, he'd be looking for the exit.
Right.
This is no longer the case. In fact, if anything, maybe it's something that makes us just exotic enough to be interesting. But it's no longer a matter of survival. Not in North America, not in Toronto, not in a middle-class environment. Certainly not in show business. I know what you mean about the tom, the taste, I think is the word for it, right? You want to sit in a deli. You want to hear these people yapping at like full volume and full speed, full throttle, complaining, because that's the essence of Jewish humor, is to kvetch, to complain. And it's not happening anymore because we don't have to complain, because we're powerful enough now to do what we want and to get what we want. That's the death of humor.
Yeah. That's so depressing what you just said. It's weird that it's depressed. It came, we
won. That's the problem.
Yeah.
We won.
You know, tonight, ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at a guy who's been married for 34 years, and I'm still in love with the same woman. If my wife ever finds out, she'll kill me. Now, you take my wife. Please, you all know that shit. I'll never forget our wedding night. God knows I've tried, but... There she was in one corner of the room with a lingerie. I was in the other corner with a chair and a whip. My wife went to the beauty parlor. She got a mud pack. For 2 days, she looked nice. Then the mud fell off. She puts this mud on her face before going to bed at night. I said, good night, swamp. She ran after the garbage man. Am I too late for the garbage? She says, no, jump in. Man, do you know what it means to come home at night to a woman who'll give you a little love, a little affection, a little tenderness? It means you're in the wrong house. That's what it means.
A man goes to visit his mother in Century Village, and she's 92, and he's decided it's finally time to tell his mother that he's gay. So he tells his mother, you know, that he's a homosexual, and his mother she just looks at him. She says, you're a homosexual? Does that mean that you put your mouth on another man's private part? And he says, yes. It does. And she says, you'll do that, but you won't even try my kishka? My mother was, you know, very interested in Eastern philosophy, and, you know, if it's Tuesday, it must be Ram Dass. My mother wasn't your typical Jewish mother. Interestingly, my father kind of personifies I mean, he's incredibly cheap, and, you know, we go to a restaurant, and my father gets very tense. You know, and he just looks at me and my sisters, and he'll be like, all right, no tricks, which I don't know what he means. Like I'm gonna order crab cakes, you know?
Yeah.
He's terrified that we're gonna order an appetizer and a main course. He goes crazy. Like, and if you do, he's like, what are you, a truck driver? You need that much food? It's easier when you share a common background. And that's part of the reason why I like marrying a Jew. Also, I really like to complain. And they're at my level of complaining. You know, when I date Gentiles, they would be shocked that everything was like, you know, we ran out of tinfoil is up there with we're being audited. And only another Jewish person can relate to that. And, that's very comforting and sexy, for me at least.
I mean, that's sort of funny. I mean, when we were looking at names, my wife's not Jewish, she said a certain name. I can't remember what it was. And without even thinking, I said, "Tu goyish." Like, I can't have that name.
Of course,
in my house. And then she said, how do you get to play the Jew card? You don't go to shul, you don't do this. And it's like, no, but I'm Jewish. I'm Jewish because certain names would make me sad. I couldn't have a daughter named whatever.
Dylan.
Priscilla. I don't know what it was. What are your kids' names?
My son is Rufus, and my daughter is Ariel.
Those aren't Jewish names.
They're not Jewish names, but they're not that goyish.
They have Yiddish names?
So basically, you're making a film because you feel guilty that you married a Gentile, that you didn't raise your daughter Jewish, you didn't give her a bat mitzvah. I don't know that we can solve all your problems. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I think what you probably should do is you have a year. You have a year. Next Yom Kippur, atone for it. Internally, really atone for it.
All right, I am a Jewish mother, and my parenting skills, which I unfortunately got from my parents, but the one thing that I've taught my kids is, now my kids can say anything abusive, horrible, awful to me, and they won't get in trouble if it's funny. In my house, funny trumps everything. So, an example, they named a sandwich after me at the Carnegie Deli last year, and I went home. I was very excited. So I went home to my son Henry. I said, "Oh my God, guess what? They're naming the sandwich after me at the Carnegie Deli," and I'm so excited. And he says to me, "Oh, what are they going to call it? The Who's Judy Gold?" And I was like, "All right, no punishment. That was good." But then he says, "What are they going to put on it? Expired meat?" I was like, "Get to your room. That sucked. No computer, okay?" It is an amazing thing when you grow up in a Jewish household where everyone's trying to one-up each other, and you go out in the real world and you say something, someone says something, and you make a glib remark, and they're like, "What?" It's sad that people who are not sort of Jew savvy, would that be Jew savvy? And people that don't know the Jewish culture would think, you're negative instead of funny. Like that they can't even open their mind to say, no, that is actually really, really funny. I mean, it's incredible to me that people can't see the humor in everything. The thing is, I think most Jews see the humor in every situation, no matter how morose. Look, Jews are realistic. I don't say we're negative. I mean, we are, yes, there are negative Jews. We're realistic. I've never really heard a Jew say, when you say, "Hey, how you doing?" Can't complain.
My grandparents, all four of them, were hilarious. They lost their entire family in the Holocaust. How could you not be hilarious? My parents are painfully unfunny. They were content. Content isn't funny. Goyim are content. Jewish audiences are insanely critical. We love to criticize. They love to go to a show and leave the show and go, "I didn't care for it."
I have a thing, I should show you it, it's here somewhere. I played the Catskills, which is the mecca for comedy, especially Jewish comedy. But and they knew that. They knew that I was at the Concord, and I have a menu from the Concord from the weekend, and it says brisket, soup, Howie Mandel. I'm on the menu. Comedy is like part of the weekend. You eat, and then you laugh. Laughter is part of the Jewish diet.
So now my question is, I don't know where to go to get my hit of Jewishness because I don't feel it from our generation. Like
You
I
don't
felt
feel you know what? So this film is about where you can get in touch with that Jewish kind of comedy or the Jewish feeling that you had. It's still there. We just have different accents now. Everybody I know that is in this business, and those are the people that I know that are in this business, they kvetch. You know, we still kvetch. We just don't say kvetching. We don't say that word. There's not a lot of people to use the ch sound around anymore. That's what we're missing, is just the accent. We're the same people. We complain, we eat, and we're funny.
Okay.
Those are the three life forces of Judaism.
I play Scrabble on Facebook.
Right.
And, you know, it rejects words that aren't in the dictionary. So you can't put Italian, you couldn't put Finn, you couldn't put Indian, you couldn't put Muslim, but you can put Jew. So I'm thinking, well, why Jew? Because it's a verb. It's the only possible reason. They don't allow any proper names. There's no capital letter name words in Scrabble. You can't put Canadian, can't put Christian. You can put Jew because it's a verb. But just so you know, to Jew, it doesn't mean to study hard and then share your knowledge with society. It doesn't mean to make a nice meal and take it over to a sick person when they're at home. I know, I thought maybe it meant that. No, it means to rip somebody off, to cheat them.
Do you think being Jewish is, for us, deeper ingrained in our bones than other cultures are for other people, like being Finnish?
I don't know. How would I know?
Well, I mean, by looking around. Well, here's one way to...
My vast Finnish group that I hang out with? My many Finnish friends?
Well, okay. Here's how I look at it. There are 13 million Jews. There are, I'm going to be conservative now and not be exaggerated. There are 100,000 books basically called To Be a Jew. I don't think there's 100 books called What Does It Mean to Be a Finn?
Right, but they live in Finland for the most part. I mean, Finland's a place.
Right.
Jews don't have a place. Our culture is portable. That's the whole point. There is no Jewland. Whatever they want to say about our biblical rights to Israel, it is not Jewland. Jews are a dispersed culture that we carry in a book and we talk about and is passed on between us wherever else we happen to be.
So yours, okay. But I mean, that is a really interesting distinction of culture and a place. But most places think they're cultures.
Well, they're allowed.
But most places, you're saying, aren't cultures.
I'm saying that Rome today is a very different culture than Rome when Caesar was in charge.
Right.
I mean, it is not even close to the same thing.
Whereas we
are pretty much the same as we were when Caesar was in charge.
Jews were sarcastic.
I have no doubt about it. Because we're the arguing people. It's built into our culture for sure. I mean, you know, you call an idiot chacham. You know, if somebody says he's a real chacham, even though it literally translates as smart person, it means idiot. That's how we live, right? Good thinking, Einstein. That never means you're smart like Einstein. That means you're stupid, unlike Einstein. So you noticed, huh? Sherlock? That doesn't mean you're the great detective. It means you're a moron. Everybody can see that. It's just the way we're trained.
And what does that have to do with that they always wanted to kill us? You know what? Basically, I'm just asking you to explain the Jewish soul.
Where would smartass come out of being victimized?
Yeah.
Because that's all you can do. Because the only power you have is to be a smartass. I mean, it makes perfect sense that, you know, you're downtrodden and in real terms of power and life and death, you have nothing. But on a personal, interpersonal level, you can still be somebody because, you know, you're a smartass.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? I hope you don't mind if I'm not too hilarious right now. I'm in bad shape. Do you know that I was almost drafted? I wanted to fight. It would have been my pleasure to fight. But you know when they called me? In the middle of a war. Not that I'm a pacifist or a conscientious objector. I don't believe in that. But I'm afraid. Not guns. Guns don't disturb me. Bullets. I want my country to have the best, not guys like me. I told them there's a war going on. Is this a time to learn a trade? I gave them a good idea how they could win this whole war without me. The prisons in this country are full of murderers, people who love to kill. That's all they got to do is kill people. They sit in the prisons, they're doing nothing. They could be out killing people. But don't take them, you got professionals. What do you need me? I'm not even an amateur. First of all, the government could save a fortune of money with them. They got their own guns. They got their own bullets, they know how to march, they're already numbered, just open the doors. The nerve to send a guy like me to the army, to Germany yet. If the Germans see me, are they going to shoot at anybody else? Thank God they don't know where I am. I'm going to go looking for them.
Can I tell you my favorite Jewish joke?
I was just going to ask you. Go ahead.
My single all-time favorite Jewish joke. It captures the total spirit of sense of absurdity that's and all of it is in Jewish. And you know it as soon as I'm going to tell it. It's the one where he's sitting there going, "Oi, am I thirsty?" You know it, right? Okay, so that's my favorite joke.
Okay, well, it's only because somebody already told that in the film. Do you have
Oh, did they?
Yeah, do you have...
Well, I like the jokes. I like the, I just like to tell the punchlines because everybody knows all the jokes.
Okay, so why
I like the kind of jokes like, look who thinks he's nothing,
Okay,
I like the he was wearing a hat.
Tell the look who thinks he's nothing.
The day before Kol Nidre, the synagogue is empty, except for the rabbi and the cantor and the gabbai, who is essentially, an administrator, a janitor, whatever, a guy,
Right.
It's a junior person who works in the synagogue. And in the emptiness and the quiet of the synagogue before the congregation arrives, the rabbi goes up to the bima. What's the English word for the bima? The front.
Pulpit?
The pulpit, and he prostrates himself in front of, the ark, in front of the Torahs, and he pounds his chest and he goes, "Oh Lord, oh God, compared to your greatness, I am nothing, I am nothing, I am nothing. Compared to your might and to your wonder, I am nothing, I am nothing." When he's done, the cantor goes up, he does the same thing, "I am nothing, I am nothing, I am nothing." And the gabbai is so inspired by this that up he goes to where, it's not his place. And he does the same thing. "Oh Lord, compared to your greatness, your mighty, your wonder, your power, I am nothing, I am nothing, I am nothing." And the rabbi turns to the cantor and says, "Look who thinks he's nothing."
I'll tell you the funniest thing in the world. And it's timing, and Jews have this type of time. I met a Shabbat dinner in Brooklyn, and they sit me next to this guy who's a survivor of the Holocaust. Old man. He's wearing a short sleeve shirt. You see the numbers and everything. And a conversation began at the table about the synagogue, and somebody in the synagogue who moved the chair and didn't put it back or borrowed a book, and it was nonsense. This old man out of nowhere picks his head out of the soup and in Yiddish says, "Ich gedenkt him von der Lager," which means I remember him from the lager, from the death camps. Now you have to understand now, the whole room is like, he's got our attention, like the floor is yours, right? And he says this in Yiddish. It was the funniest thing. They're talking about a guy in the synagogue who must be 100 years old also, who took a book and didn't bring it back. Nonsense, right? So the guy goes, "Ich gedenkt him von der Lager." I remember him from like Auschwitz or whatever death camp they were at together with. And he begins to tell the story. He goes, "Es gewesen Nacht." There was a night. Als ich hab gehabt a Kartoffel. I had a potato, and er hat nicht a Kartoffel, and he didn't have a potato. And ich hab to give him my Kartoffel. I gave him my potato. Right? And we're all listening to this. And he takes the perfect pause and says, "If I'd have known back then he'd be doing the things he's doing today, I wouldn't have given him the potato."
These people were from the old country. That's the thing that we forget. They were from a different country. When they came, and then all of a sudden there was some success and then there was the annexation where they moved from the cities to the suburbs. That was the beginning of the end. That was the beginning of the end of the culture, of the community. The community.
Right. So in a way, I can never recapture that because those people are gone.
You can recapture it by telling stories about those people to people that didn't know those people. I think that there are a lot of funny Jews, and I think that Jews are funny. I think that the culture is funny. I think that it's based on humor. It's based on turning things upside down and looking inward, which is always funny.
This is Jewish.
This is very Jewish. What we're doing here is this is about a 99 on the Jew scale. There's a Jewmometer, and this is like a 99 degrees. Right?
If I was interrupting you more, it would go to 100.
You should be interrupting me a lot more. You should be flailing. You should be, and hold on. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is yesterday, not today, because I'm not present. That's the other thing. Don't be present. If you're going to be a Jew, you had better live in the past. If you're present, you're not a Jew. If you're in the future, you're a Jew. If you're in the past, you're a Jew. If you're in the present, you are not a Jew. And that's how you evaluate it.
So is your wife Jewish?
No comment. Yeah, no, she is.
She is. So your kid is Jewish?
My child is Jewish.
So you have no, so do you think your child is going to grow up and have phlegm?
Have phlegm? My child already has phlegm. My child is an 85-year-old man, and she's a girl, which is ironic. And she has a beard. No, she's 8, but she's amazing. But I'll tell you how Jewish she is already. She doesn't remotely realize it. And she hasn't been indoctrinated into a lot of Hebrew school or at temple, or a little bit, but not a lot. I tell her stories about my life. I told her since she was a baby. And I'll be eating dinner, we'll be sitting at the table, and she will walk across the table and come down and look in my eye, and she'll say, "Tell them the story about the time you stole the salami, you were 3. And then she'll go back over there and she'll say, "Make it funny. Funny story. 3. Tell them." I mean, she's 8. So is she Jewish? Yeah, probably.
I was seriously worried that my mother-in-law was going to secretly baptize my daughter.
Okay, well, that says everything. If you were worried that your mother-in-law was going to secretly baptize, that says everything I need to say. I'm never going to have that problem. What, my mother-in-law's going to secretly circumcise my kid? We did it. We did it in front of the 80 people with whitefish. It was fine. It was easy.
Yeah, see, I mean, to me, when people ask me, how will your daughter be Jewish? I think maybe she'll be Jewish because she'll be sarcastic. That's about all I can think.
Does she like fried onions?
Well, she's not even 2.
So she's not even 2. Oh, you still have time.
To make her more
No, but
Jewish.
you still have time. You still have a lot of time to sort of what you want to show her.
Yeah, I don't know what I want to show her. That's the thing. I don't know, in the absence of Israel and synagogue, how can I make her Jewish?
So go light. Do a JCC preschool. Do a summer camp where they, on Friday they have challah. That's it. Give her a little something.
Do you know Camp Ramah?
You don't have to go that far. Why does it always have to be black and white? I mean, again, that's what's great about, that's what's great about being Jewish. You can decide how little or how much. I think true Judaism means that you are always free to question, and the learning never ends. I mean, that's the tenet of being a Jew. And the great thing about being a comedian is the learning never ends. The questions are always there. That's all we do is we ask questions, What's up with that? Have you ever noticed this? Why are we doing this? Who would do that?
When you see Hasidim on the street, on a street corner on Saturday, standing there because they got to walk everywhere, having a conversation, all you assume is like, that must be important. No, it's not. They could be talking about where they're going to eat lunch. But it seems like there's a tradition of discourse, of debate, of like, what? That's not right. No, why are you telling me it's not right? Doesn't seem right to me. What would God think? That's a good question. Let's figure out, what would God think? How is that not going to end up funny eventually? I find familiarity, and I find comfort in it a lot of times, but I'm also horrendously annoyed when Jews are too Jewy. But,
And what is it? Okay, so...
It's just annoying in the Jewy way, and I imagine I see part of myself in it. But I've talked to people that it's like they're playing a Jewish character.
Right.
You know, like, you know, they're like, I don't know, maybe I should. I'm like, are you really like that?
I think after a while they get like that, don't you think?
Well, that,
they
I mean,
don't
that's
know.
how we open this thing. Is, you know,
Right.
is that going to happen to you? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I grunt. I have a 2-year-old daughter who grunts.
You have a 2-year-old? How old are you?
61.
How's that going?
I love it.
First kid?
Yeah.
How do you like that? I don't have any kids. I ask you for personal reasons.
Yeah.
Not judging you.
I always wanted. And
my girlfriend wants one, and I don't have any, and I'm 49. But you know, you provide me hope, I guess. You know, where are you going to go at 50 or 60, and you're like, you know, what the fuck does my life mean, really? You know, how do I figure out what that meaning is? So you're going to have a kid, you're going to get reconnected with some sort of faith. You walk into a synagogue or you go into a deli where you call that Jew that you knew from high school. Are you going to feel comforted? Hell yes, you are. Are you going to resent it? Yeah. Is that resentment going to diminish a little as you get older? Probably. Look, if you're going to, you know, hang your faith on something with the kind of mindset you have or that I have, it's not going to be, conventional.
Right.
You know, look, if you don't believe in God, you don't believe in God. But you clearly believe in Jews.
So this is what it is. This is the conversation that you want me to have with you.
Any conversation.
My Jewishness. And the fact that I do Jewish comedy.
No, not Jewish comedy.
All right.
We're
the fact
leaving.
that I'm a Jew who does comedy.
No, just that you're a Jew.
Yes, I'm a Jew.
Well, okay, and
but I somehow wound up doing comedy. But I am proud of my background, and I will say that. But that's as far as I can go with it. I can't keep living it.
Okay.
When I do meet someone who can speak Mamelushn, when I can hear that, when I can hear just a few words, I know I can communicate with this individual. Something lovely is happening because we're remembering stuff that meant so much to us in one time in our lives. If your Bubby made you laugh, you would tell people that. If your Zadie made you laugh, that was very rare.
Every time you say a word of Yiddish, it just sort of, whatever, it like warms my heart. And I'm just, you know, I don't think there's an answer to this. I'm just coming to talk to people. I don't say, nobody can bring my parents back, but I'm just saying, I'm a little surprised that, like, I'm 60, right? I'm an old Jew now, but I'm not an old Jew like when my bubby was 60, she was
much older.
She was older, and she was, you know, everything was, it couldn't wait. It, like everything, she couldn't give you a straight answer. Everything was a complaint, even if things were good. I'm a little Jewish, but I'm not like that. And my daughter is not going to even be this much Jewish. You know, that's all I'm wanting to talk about, you know. Like, what about your kids? Are they going to be old Jews, or are they just going to be older people who are Jewish?
I have a daughter who is not going to be an old Jew. She's hardly a today's Jew. And I had a son, which tragically we lost before his 13th birthday.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Boy, that was a toughie. And, but still, ich, der Mann sich wird still, in mein Städtele dem Kleinem, wie ich hab die Schein zuerst ersehen, wie ich hab gebäuert und wie ich hab geborgen, wie ich hab die Schein zuerst ersehen. Schlutzk, mein Städtele, wie ich bänk noch dir. Tief in Herzen, heim du mein, liegst du da bei mir. a Wigel auf a Strickerle und a zerbrochen Betterle. Tief in Herzen heim, du mein, liegst du da bei mir.
Oh, you're doing a good job, honey. Keely, you want some more soup?
Der Mann sich wird still, in mein Städterle dem Kleinen, wie ich hab die Schein zuerst ersehen. Wie ich hab geboren, und wie ich hab geboren. Wie ich hab die Schein zuerst ersehen. Schlutz, mein Städterle, wie ich denk nach dir. Tief in Herzen, heim du mein, liegst du da bei mir. A Wigel auf a Strickerle und a zerbrochen Betterle. Tief in Herzen, heim du mein, liegst du da bei mir.
What does that song mean?
The town that I grew up in, I'm missing. Schlutsk is the name of the town. Stetterle is the town.
That should be the theme song of my film. Toronto is still there, but the town in my heart is gone.
I just hope I get a call tomorrow. The sound wasn't working. Verstinky, can we do it again? Can we come back and do it again?
What would the answer be?
Oh, how long have you been married?
3 years.
No, really.
Really?
And you have kids?
I have a 1.5-year-old, and I'm 60. What do you have to say about that?
Is she Jewish?
No. Croatian.
Are you? That's the end of your whole movie. There it is. No. Mr. Macher, Mr. Jew, Mr. marries a 38-year-old Croatian and has a 1.5-year-old Croatian kid, and you're 60?
Yeah. That could be the end.